Pour cet après-midi. On avait d'autres obligations, d'autres engagements institutionnels. Et David travaille à... Je ne sais pas, je suis en train de... Je pense, j'imagine que c'était pour ça. Et David Strivay travaille à l'Université de Liège. Il est directeur du Centre européen d'archéométrie et Institut de physique, toujours à Liège. Il a écrit énormément, une quantité remarquable d'articles. Il travaille sur des domaines qui concernent la physique, des domaines comme le développement des techniques analytiques appliquées à l'analyse de l'héritage culturel, n'est-ce pas? Analyse donc de tableaux aussi. Peut-être c'était intéressant aussi de dire quelques mots sur les centres d'archéométrie. Je ne sais pas, peut-être je vous laisse la parole pour présenter un petit peu. C'est mieux que moi, je peux lire, hein, mais peut-être...
je vais plutôt présenter notre...
Et les titres, c'est les titres à venir, mais c'est les titres véritables. C'est pas comme un title, non. C'est
private joke.
Donc, à vous la parole.
Merci beaucoup. I don't know if you prefer that I speak English or...
English pour français.
Probably it's better because they are two persons.
Okay, so I will switch to English. So. Most of my slides are in English, but...
Thank you for your sacrifice, but it won't speak on English, but that was best for me.
No, good.
I promise to ask you 2 questions, please.
Okay. So, I'm a physicist, a nuclear physicist even. But I'm working most of my research work now is in cultural heritage. Even if I'm continuing to work in nuclear physics with a particular accelerator, with space science and geologists and chemists and so on. But now most of my work now is related to cultural heritage. And so we have created a research unit, which is called Art, Archéologie, Patrimoine, so art, archaeology and heritage. And we have divided our research in 5 different fields. So first one is the humans and how they are evolving, and the human itself, but also the techniques that he is using or developing them. How the humans are organizing themselves in space. Could be a house, because we have architects in this research units, for example. But also in territories and the connection between the territories. And then after we are switching, so that's more archaeology, let's say, and architecture. And then after we are switching to more art history research topics about the image and its representation in history and in society. And then afterwards it's more the valorization, so how the collection are organized, how exhibition can be organized also and presented to the public. And the last one is more about documentation and how to conserve and restore our cultural heritage. And just in the middle, that's why I'm in this research unit, there is a toolbox. And the toolbox will be how we'll get access to the different subjects here, because most of them really they are based on materials. So for the archaeology it's materials. For art, it's also materials. It's a painting, it's a sculpture. So we are trying to get access to the information, not only through the normal art history channels or archaeology channels, but also through a vision on the materials, okay? that are part of the subject, let's say. So that's the why we are doing the analysis. So for example, in archaeology, we are looking at the raw materials, of the provenance of these materials, how they are being, all the objects that are being produced, used, and so on. So through really the vision of the composition of these materials. In art history, we are looking at the materials, of course, but also at the, or if it's a painting, at the gist of the painting, to really to have a sense of it, but through this technical production. Okay? In conservation, of course, it's how to let's say, have access also to the degradation processes, to have a really deep knowledge of it, so to prevent, of course, these degradation processes. And also, for example, the effect of climate change also on our cultural heritage. And the last one is more for broader public, so it's more on expertise and authentication of art objects. So how we will do it? So it's more about, first is really our eye. So we're working our first tool is the eye, of course, like most of the art historians and archaeologists. But we are using also, as you will see, more, let's say, technological systems, of course photography, but also different kind of photography, what we are calling multispectral photography or even hyperspectral photography, where in science we like to put multi, hyper, mega, giga, and so on. So that's what is coming now is hyperspectral imaging, and it's coming from the satellite imaging of fields, for example, that we're using also in cultural heritage now. We are also using, of course, analytical techniques to have access to the composition. Can be the different elements like iron, lead, and so on. But can be also the molecules inside. So really enlarge of it. And what we are trying really to do now, that's one of the things we are developing for now, is really to combine both of them. So to have the imaging, but at the same time also the analysis, the molecular or the elemental composition like an image, let's say. So, for example, you have the image of some molecules, the image of some elements, but the distribution inside the object or inside the paintings, and you will have a few examples of it. Okay. So that's our toolbox. Is this? So many different systems coming from physics, coming from chemistry. Most of them were used in the labs. So you had to bring in the lab all your objects or your art objects to do the analysis. Now we're doing more and more mobile analysis. So we're going in the field, and I will show you some nice picture of what we're doing with this kind of systems. So just a few examples of our research for now. That's what we're doing in this last years or last months. So that's a project. It's in chronological order. So I'm beginning with prehistory, and so that's in the cave of Fongome, so in Dordogne, and that's to show you some of our systems here. So we're bringing really the system inside the cave and do all the imaging or the analytical research inside. So that's the paintings are here for now, for example. And it was a project with the lamps, so that's our brother, let's say, in Paris. So that's a Laboratoire d'Archéologie Moléculaire et Structurale, so a mix of archaeology and science, and the Hagen Laboratory from Berlin. And we should go next in 2 weeks there to continue this project. So it's more about the raw material that were used to produce these paintings, and if they are coming from just outside the cave, or if they are brought from many kilometers or tens of kilometers or hundreds of kilometers from them. Okay? And also a conservation issue also there. That's a project we have with the MAFTO. MAFTO is the Mission Archéologique Française de Tel Ouest. So that's in Luxor, in Egypt, and there we have a really big project there now from 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. We are going there every year, and we'll be there in January for 2 or 3 weeks to do the analysis and imaging of the painting there. And one thing that is interesting is not that we are working on one tomb. That's what I will show you also with the other examples. We are working on several tens of tombs, and to have really a corpus to compare things, to do some kind of also a statistical analysis, and graphs should be a great help in that subject. So you can see already here again the system now we're using. That's a simple one, that's microscopy, but we have also different kind of microscopy and analytical system that we're bringing there. That's UV here. So again, that's a multispectral imaging. That's in Ostia. So that's a project with Thomas Morin, which is professor of archaeology in Liège. And we are going there every year or so in June, which is not so bad. Not mosquitoes, but it's okay. And it's really to analyze here the different kind of wall paintings, the decoration that were used at in this Republican house, so minus 40. Minus 40, yes. So again, we're bringing our systems, and I will show you, of course, what kind of information you can get from that. That's the idea. We're not only doing paintings, that's one in France that we have now, a project that we have in France, in Jamilly-des-Prés, so that's a church, and you have this nice, I don't know how to say it, roof, let's say, with a tesseract, so small pieces of glass, and there we are analyzing the composition of the tesseract to have to know how they were produced, and if they were produced just in, again, next to the church. So we have also some excavation to see if there is still the rest of the tools that were used to produce them, for example. That's another one. So that's a Picasso. So if you have the opportunity to go to the Musée La Bovary, so that's the museum not so far from here in Liège. That's a Picasso painting, and we had the project a few years ago now about this one, but it's to show you one of the techniques we're using. So it's a nice history of this painting. If you want, I can talk about it longer afterwards. So Picasso made a few different backgrounds. So there are 4 different backgrounds for these paintings, and the idea was trying to reproduce these backgrounds without, of course, touching it. And the technique that we're used here is hyperspectral imaging. So what is hyperspectral imaging? So when you are taking a picture with your smartphone, you have only the information of color. So most of you now in this project, they will work on the reproduction of the paintings, so on pictures. And so for each pixel, you have only information on color. Hyperspectral imaging means that for each pixel, you have a spectrum. Spectrum is a composition, for example, of the painting. Can be also the reflection of the light. So you have much more information, so which means much more data to handle. So for example, one of these things we can do is to get some kind of this image, so a different vision of the painting. That's more in the infrared region, and with this we can so visualize what is behind, like a radiography, but with different kind of information. For example, you can see the woods that are present there behind. So because Picasso asked one of his friends to paint the background because he didn't want to do a different one. And so that's a background with woods here, like in the déjeuner from Manet. And then afterwards he tried to do some cubist also painting, and then he was fed up, and then he painted the actual one background, and that's what we are seeing, of course. So with these techniques we can have access to what is not available with our eye. So it's different kind of vision, let's say, and also it's different kind of understanding of the painting, of the art object. Right? So maybe that's something we can add in your database, for example. Is something that you can do. Another project that we have just finished, and that I will talk about it more longer after. It's about Magritte, and it's to show you also how we're working. So this system, maybe if you are looking at the slides, it's the same system that was in Fontgome. It was the same system that was in Italy, and the difference is that we are changing every time the system. I mean, how we are organizing the work, how we're organizing the methodology. So we're adapting each time the way we are working to the object, which is completely different from the normal approach in science. When you are bringing something in chemistry or in physics, you are giving your sample, and then they will crush it. They will do whatever they want to adapt it to the system, to the methodology. what we are doing is the opposite, is to adapt the system to the art object. Okay? And to do it in a non-invasive way, of course, not to get any sampling of the, or less sampling from the object. So what we can have is this kind, that's a spectrum. That's the kind of information you can get. So for example, it's techniques is CESERH, X-ray fluorescence, and what we're doing is really to get information on the elemental composition. So each peak here corresponds to an element. Okay? Now we have zinc, we have lead, barium, calcium, silver, barium, antimony, etc., etc. So we have access to the composition, okay, with this kind of thing. The idea now is really to have this kind of information for each pixel of the painting. Okay. That's really a new way of working, and it's easier for when you are collaborating with art historian or archaeologist. If I'm showing this to an art historian, he will not understand anything. Okay. So what you are doing is to work with image. Different kind of image, representation of the painting, but it's again with image. That's another one, so that's an orthodox painting. Another kind of spectrum. We see we have different kind of spectrum like that. And it's the way we are using is really to excite the object. So if I'm pushing you, for example, some of you will push me back, some of you will slap me, some of you will punch me, some of you will cry, I don't know. So you will react differently. So what we are doing is to push a little bit the painting, not too much because it will crush or it will be damaged, and we are looking at what is the answer of the painting. Some kind of answer is this kind of spectrum. Okay? And we are using this information to do our modelization and to understand the work of the painter from this example here. So that's the way, the kind of camera also, this also to show you the evolution of the techniques now. So that's the camera that was used for Picasso, for example, was 25 kilo, with big lamps now. And you have the computers, you have big machine here, electronics behind. Now, that was 5 years ago. Now everything is reduced and it's kind of a photograph, just a small camera. That's the one we are bringing, for example, in Egypt. So to show you that also the technological development can also bring new ways of working, really. Especially in our field, because in our field we have to go where the art object where the archaeological objects are, of course. That's all, one of the projects we have also with the Getty, so it's more on the conservation issues here about the metallic paint and outside, kept outside the museum itself. So I will, to give you two examples, let's say, one on a case, so that's one painting, and the second I will show you is more on the corpus. So this one is about Gauguin, the second one will be on René Magritte. So two ways of working with the same systems, but also because we were asked different things. Okay? The issues were not the same. For example, this one was more about a question from the restaurator. I will show you the picture just on the next slide. And he didn't know what to do. Okay, so that's a kind of a help for the restaurator. That's the painting, so that's the portrait of Cézanne Bainbridge, painted by Gauguin in 1891. That's the first Polynesian painting by him on his first day, and it's it was an order from this dignitary in Tahiti, and it's inspired by this picture. It was brought after in Paris, and then it was acquired by the Musée Royal des Beaux-Arts de Belgique in Brussels in 1923. That is really not in good state. So there was a crowdfunding that was launched to get money to restore it. And there were some really issues about degradation, so changes in colors, that maybe you cannot see there, but there are really different kind of colors, the blue here, in the red also the gradation, and in the flowers also some are gray, and they should be gray. And also some issue about this chair. You see the right bar chair here, and the left one and the right here, they are really not the same. So the conservator didn't know if it was from the Gauguin hand or if it was something that was added to get some more symmetry in the picture. So what we are doing each time is to do this kind of imaging. So we are doing high resolution imaging, so photography with a kind of gigapixel, not resolution, but number of pixels, let's say, so around the gigapixel, in visible light, so the normal photography, but we are doing this also in UV, in infrared, in X-rays, with X-rays also to do the radiography, and with other light also, okay? And transparency, so we have the same image but with different vision. And also that's something that could be interesting also to present to the public, because they like to see also the things quite different from what they see in normal light. That's one thing that is really interesting. But it was not enough, so with this kind of system, with this kind of information, he was not sure what it would do. So we were working again in the museum itself here for something like 1 week around to do everything with the painting. And that's the kind of image we can get. So you have on the left, you have the visible one, and then you have the distribution of the different elements. For example, the calcium one, the phosphorus one, the zinc, lead, barium, and so on. So with this, we have information on the composition of the pigments, so what kind of pigments he was using, but also the restoration that were performed. For example, here you have kind of shadow, some dark area. Dark means that there is no zinc, okay, or that it was absorbed by something else, but it's a lack of zinc, let's say. When it's bright, there is a lot of zinc. That's the same for lead and so on. So with this kind of image, we can have an understanding of what is going on behind the surface. Okay. But the problem is really to extract the information from this kind of image, because you can have tens of images from the same painting with different information, and what is difficult is to extract it. So it's statistical methods have to be used, because not if we are doing it by ourselves, it's not enough. We have to use principal component analysis and so on, for example. So that's the different kind of examples, but I will go quite fast on this one. So really to extract the information we want, so for example on the kind of different blue he was using, what you can see about this armchair here, the bar. He was doing kind of 3 different ones. You can see 1, 2, 3. We can see it with the Mercury paintings and the Mercury image. So with this we can, let's say, give some advice to the restorator, and he can do some kind of reconstruction. I'll show you some kind of so some kind of reconstruction of the painting before doing it really itself. So now after restoration it looks like this. So he has removed this one, even if we told him that there is a high chance that it was from Gauguin himself. It was not so, let's say, well done, because it was at the end of his life. He was really sick and he was shaking, let's say. So it was not so precise as it's at the beginning of his career. But what he did is not to remove it, of course. He was just putting some aquarelle, so something that can remove with water to erase it. It's not erased, it's just hidden. So that's a simple case. Let's say just, one painting and get maximum information. Okay? So that's a questioning from a conservator, questioning from an art historian, or from a restorator in this case. But what we are doing more and more is to have a big corpus, and for example from one artist, and to get maximum information to be able to compare. For example, on Magritte it was to analyze and to image paintings from his whole career from 1920s to 1960s, and to see the evolution in his practice. Okay, to see, for example, so that was done with the Museum of Royal des Beaux-Arts, of course, again, and to see he started his production through material use, so a different kind of way of looking at this art. On Magritte you have a lot of art historian, of course, books or psychology books also, but not so much on the materials. So that's a different way of looking at the artist also. So the evolution of this technique, but also detection again in identification of conservation issues. And lost paintings, that's one thing that people also like, is to see again some kind of change in the painting. So we did more than that, now it's more than 50 oil paintings from Madrid and 10 gouache between 1921 and 1963. So every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to the museum and working for 3 to 4 days there. And we had 3 to 4 paintings each time, and they were going through the same methodology. Something also is important here is to be able to compare things. We have to use the same methodology. It's difficult to compare results from different teams because it's not exactly the same system, the same way of looking at it, the same way of extracting the information. So it's really important to have really the same methodology. And of course, it was done in situ. All these kind of things were done for each painting. So it's around a terabyte of data. And some examples. So that's about this technique. So that's again, that's the painting La Bonne Fortune. So in 1945, it's in this period Vache. And one way is to look at, for example, hyperspectral imaging. So we can get access, for example, to the underdrawing, for example, around the sketch with this crayon, carbon one, and also changes also in the painting itself. So you see already kind of information about how he was preparing his painting. The different spot here is about the conservation, so kind of restoration that were also done. About the degradation, so that's L'Homme du Large, 1927, and a few paintings from this period, they had this kind of spots. You see, that's under UV. Under UV you can see really the restoration. That's appearing like dark spots. And if you are looking really on the more precisely, you can see these dark spots. And if you are looking with microscope, it's kind of a volcano, small volcano appearing on the surface. So black inside with white outside here. And we did some really a lot of research on this one because this kind of degradation appeared only on the 27 painting, the 1927 paintings, few of them, around 10 of them, and we didn't understand why. So we did other analysis here, and it's kind of what we call metal soaps. So a soap is something that is doing bubble, and metal soap, so it's a bubble with metal inside, and this one is coming from the under, so from the preparation layer, and it's like a bubble, so it's coming, growing, and coming at the surface and splitting. Okay, and it's doing this kind of crater or kind of volcanoes. And so they were restoring each time, but each time is coming back. Okay, so there is no way to heal this one. It's just to understand why this thing is coming. Again, with our system, we can do image of the elements present. You see, and then you can see really what is the difference between the way where there are this degradation and where there is no degradation. For example, this one. The third way also is the composition modification. So that's an example on this painting. It's 1928, this one. So that's a guy that is talking to himself. So the title is Character Meditating on Madness. So we have different kind of techniques, imaging techniques to see what is under. So we can do infrared. We didn't see anything. But if you are doing radiography, this guy is not talking to himself. So he's even talking some kind of secret with someone else. And so that's something also that Magritte did several times. So this kind of changing, and also a link to the title. Something that we don't know, that is not accessible to us, but something that of course Magritte knew. And that's a way to have access to his thinking. How he was choosing his title. And if you don't have access to this, we don't understand. But here it's kind of private joke for him to say a guy that is meditating on madness, but he's not. And then what we did also is some research also on lost composition from Magritte. So that's one from La Pose Enchantée. So that's a painting from 1927 again. He did really many paintings at that time. And this one was lost in 1932. That's the last photograph we have from 1932. And we don't know the size, we don't know anything about it. And again, it's the MoMA, like you. MoMA did an exhibition on Magritte. And what they're doing is to do imaging, scientific imaging also. And radiography, for example, that's a simple things to do. And what they can see when they were doing this radiography, that it was one of the pieces of the Pose Enchantée. Okay. And that's one of their painting. But they had the one also from the Moderna Museum from Stockholm. They did also radiography. And what they had is, of course, a second part of the painting. So our colleagues from Antwerp, they were looking also from this painting, from other paintings from Magritte. This one was from Norwich, and it was the third quarter, let's say, of this painting. So quite the same size, as you can see, from the same years. 1935. So, of course, as we were working in the museum, Magritte Museum, we will look for the last pieces. So there was some candidates, but not of this one, for example. It was a good candidate. There was a change of composition also, but no way to find it. Until we did this one, so Dieu n'est pas un saint, God is not a saint. Another painting from 1935, a little bit smaller than the other ones. And if you are doing infrared, nothing, almost nothing. If you are doing radiography, you are getting the last pieces. Okay, so that's first information, let's say. Okay, we have information that's the last quarter, but we did something else, let's say, to add also some more information on the lost painting. So what we can do is to do this kind of mix of analytical composition determination and also imaging. So while using this kind of macro XRF, macro is to say we are scanning the painting, like a video scan. And so what we have, if it's coming, it's not coming. Oh, okay. So we have a scans with different elements like the Gauguin, and like this we can reproduce, we can have knowledge of the pigments that were used by Magritte in the Pose Enchantée, so in the paintings under. Okay? We can have a look also with microscope, a small microscope on the edges also, for example. And what we can do is to do a new colorization of the paintings. And to extend this, because we know the kind of pigment that was used, we have also the view of the paintings from the small cracks in the paintings also. And what we can do is to get some kind of colorization of the paintings, how it was done at that time. So the question is, of course, why Magritte cut these pieces in four, this painting in four. In 1935, he was really poor. He was coming back from Paris at the end of the 20s. He didn't have any money. He was even burning the cage of his birds because there was nothing to heat his house. And he had the opportunity to do an exhibition in London, but it was difficult to transport this big painting there. It's easier to transport small painting, so he was cutting the painting in four and do 4 paintings from one. For the pigments, he was lucky because his wife was working at the shop of paintings, so he could get some free, let's say, paints. And so also it's not only some kind of let's say small story about the paintings, but also it's also a look at how Magritte is working. So for example, he's taking the wall from the under painting, let's say, as the basis for this painting there. He's using almost the same pigments, the same colors to do the background of the second paintings, okay? And he's doing some kind of joke also, again on the title. So what was the title of this painting?
La pose enchantée.
No, the second one. Dieu n'est pas un saint. So he's doing his painting on what? For French-speaking people, on saint, on the breast. So again, so it's not a joke. I don't know. It's a good explanation of this title because Dieu n'est pas un saint with a pigeon. I don't know why. But Dieu n'est pas un saint with the breast under. It's more, you can understand. Okay. So that's how we are working. So really to have the maximum information without touching. So image, mainly on image. So what we had before, so only point analysis on some pigments, let's say, on the paintings. Now we are trying to do the full image, the full information, the distribution of all the elements, of all the molecules on the whole painting. So it means more work, of course, but really huge information to treat and to put together, let's say. And that's where this kind of techniques like this, the graphs can help also to group different kind of paintings, from not only from the style, but also from the materials that were used. And for example, also on the degradation process that can occur also, that's something that can appear from this kind of research. And maybe something that can feed your project. It's a new project that we are starting just now, from 1st of November, so it's really new. But it's a long-time project, so it's between 5 and 10 years, so it can go for several years. And it's called Face-to-Face. It's again with the Musée Royal des Beaux-Arts. And it's the evolution of representation of faces, of figures, from 14th century till the 21st century. So not only from stylistic, of course, stylistic is done already, so I'm not an art historian, so I will not talk about it. But it's more of the technical way of representing the figures, faces. Okay. Another one is more on the technical way also, is on the fluorescence paintings that are used, for example, by the street arts artists. And another one is on the polychromy of antique statues, and it's a project that will start also in a few months. It's in Tunisia. Okay, so different kind of things that can feed your project, I think, but with different kind of information. Some more work to do on this side. Okay. And then that's one I like really much. So from Banksy. because it's something I'm doing, so in prehistoric cave, and also on street artists also. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, two questions,
Yeah.
if I don't mind. So first one is, so I think during the last 10 years, in some exhibitions, maybe once or twice, I saw online some animation, but I think I saw some reconstruction, right? Kind of painting,
Yeah.
the way it was painted, like over time. Of course, this idea became famous in the 1940s when Picasso was basically a pioneer of artists as a PR, right? And he basically was the first subject. He made this famous painting, which he paints on glass, right? And
Yeah.
there's a film. So what I was wondering, right, with progression of these techniques, I think people started to do this, right, multispectral imaging, maybe already in the 70s or 80s. But I wonder if it's possible in some cases at least to reconstruct a kind of sequence of brushstrokes or sequence, or is it like you don't have this information?
No.
Because this can be a whole way to represent art, right? Imagine a presentation of like 100 famous 20th century paintings as animations where you were painted. And this is also different theoretical way to look at art, right? You're looking not at a final painting, you're looking at artistic cognition. So this actually would be theoretically really cool. Yeah.
So that's what I was saying at the beginning. So to find the gist of the painting. The brush.
Well,
the brush stroke.
No, but brush strokes, but not just brush strokes. I mean, there's millions of papers about trying to identify fake Van Goghs with brush strokes. No, I was talking about using like this multispectral information to identify like a sequence in how painting was completed. Maybe in a brushstroke level, or maybe at least like he first paints this part, maybe just for some paintings.
That's the idea.
It's possible.
Yeah, of course, yes.
So will you do some animations for us and become famous, more famous for this? Because I think just also it's like completely different material for art history. To look at paintings and work in progress, right?
So that's the idea. It's really to have the different kind of the different layers. So the technical way of how the artist was.
It's like a cognition, right? Exactly. So are you doing it? Will you do it?
No, we're doing.
You're doing?
Yeah, of course we're
So
doing.
where can you find this animation? Just follow some movies, some videos.
We have some on Gauguin, on this kind on the Gauguin one. We have some of them. Yes, on Magritte it's more difficult because of the
so
copyrights.
How can we access?
I can send you some.
You will send? I promise. Otherwise I come to your New Year and okay, and then the second question is actually also kind of theoretical, connected to this idea. You probably know him, but he was this Italian scholar. I think we're doing it like also since the 70s. This basically multispectral imaging and also finding like he became famous in finding lost painting in Leonardo. But he had a lab at the same place where I was at UC San Diego for a number of years. And he was kind of focusing on Renaissance and then Baroque. And he suggested, I think, an extremely interesting idea. When all these old paintings, works of art, we see in museums, they're kind of fake. Because what I mean is this, right? So first of all, painting was painted and then the colors changed. Like in Van Gogh case, his colors changed with a few years. But in his case, what he was thinking, he said, all these famous paintings from 3, 4, 500 years ago, we have been restored so many times. There are layers after layers. So what we're looking at is very often very different, right, from kind of what the painter intended. And somehow, even like when painter was painting, right, like in the 16th century, you have different layers, and then you have restoration layers. So he said two things. First of all, because very often we're looking at not originals, so this idea is original doesn't work. And the second thing is he said that you're basically looking at painting in time, right? And now it has been changing, it will be changing again. And you're looking, right? So the way you paint, it doesn't have identity. It keeps changing over centuries with different restorations, creaming, etc. And when I heard it, it sounded so radical. I was almost like terrified. But you may have a different perspective on this.
There's several points about it.
And maybe for Marguerite, maybe for 20th century it's not as relevant, because maybe this painting don't need to be restored, maybe it's more relevant for Renaissance.
There are several points on this. So about the changes due to restoration and changes from people that were keeping the paintings.
Yes,
from 15th century or 16th,
yes.
It's of course the case. If you're looking at the example of the mystic lamp, so the one from Ranek in Ghent, there is not so much left from the original paintings.
Yes.
So there are a lot of examples like this. But that's one point, but also it's a part of the history of the painting.
Yes.
This restoration is part of the painting now. You cannot say what is the original one. For me, the restoration is part of the story. It's part of the painting.
Exactly.
So a painting is alive, so it's changing all the time.
Exactly.
Like the degradation that you were saying.
It's so interesting. It's such a huge concept.
Yeah.
Painting is alive.
Yeah.
It doesn't have fixed state.
No, it's evolving with time.
So
And like the one from 16th century, where you are looking at this kind of brown skies or grey sky, they are not brown or grey; they are blue.
Exactly.
That's only because they were using smalt. That's a blue pigment, and it was degrading, and now it's brown. But what's the point? Do we have to go back to this blue sky or not?
Right. Exactly. That's undecided.
No, I mean for me you cannot. Or like the Mona Lisa also. If you are looking at the Mona Lisa, there are many different things inside. Behind the Mona Lisa, behind this big varnish on the Mona Lisa. But to remove this varnish will destroy the painting.
Yeah.
Also. Because, for example, Leonardo da Vinci was doing some kind of glacis. So these glacis, they are interacting with the varnish. And so if you are removing the varnish, you can remove also things that were done by Da Vinci. So it's really difficult to say this is not part of the painting. That was the problem I wanted to show, maybe not so in a good way, from Gauguin. So is it really from Gauguin?
Yes.
But even if it's from Gauguin, are we keeping it or not? That's the idea. You see, that's a concept behind.
Yesterday, somebody I think quoted John Draper. It's a very popular idea in digital humanities. So data doesn't exist. We create data. So there's lots of discussion about biases. But I think digital artistry, which is heavy to get some digital images and do something new. But maybe now time is to start visualizing with uncertainty that in fact these objects are uncertain. We have different states, and this can also interesting direction for digital history.
There is
something which can be visualized or
there is an example like this. It's a painting. It's Friday afternoon. Sorry, a wall painting in Alva. So that was painting by a modern artist, let's say, but it was completely degraded. It was fading because the curtain was open, and so the really fading. And so what they did is to reproduce the original one by projecting. With this kind of projector on it, so to reproduce it, but on the real painting, but without changing the painting. So it was not restored, because it's part of the history of the painting. They are, let's say, making a ghost of it for some hours, and then switching off, and then you can see both versions. The actual one with its history, but also, let's say, the original one. Okay. Like they are doing also for outdoor sculpture. That's something also. It's for the contemporary artist. In restoration, the idea is not to touch too much to the object, and what you are doing is can be reversible. So you can go back to you have to use painting, for example, that are more fragile than the actual. So to go back to what was before. If you're looking to outdoor sculpture, now, for example, at the Getty, they're not doing that. They're not taking the small paints and retouch it. No, they are removing all the paints and put a new one. So that's a different kind of restoration. It's a restoration also. No, because what wanted the artist? It's a color, one color with some glaze, some aspect. Yeah. So if you are not following the idea of the artist. The art object is not the same.
So my idea was actually better because
Yeah, so this project at the Getty was to find new paints that are more resistant to outdoors, but with the same glaze, with the same brillance, etc. So to have the same aspect, but with better properties. So they were hiring an engineer from the US Army that was doing paints for tanks.
yes.
He was staying there for 1 year to imagine some new paints
Yes.
that can be used for this kind of restoration. It's not really restoration, but it's
Well, it's a new concept, new phenomenon,
yeah, exactly.
kind of like simulation, perhaps.
Another question?
I was curious about following also last question. The image you showed us that was the original,
Yes.
the possible original Gauguin, because if you could say something more about that object, because it becomes interesting in this.
That's a homemade one, huh? So it's not exact painting, but it's let's say this. You mean this one, huh?
No, the Gauguin you showed us.
Yeah, the Gauguin.
Virtual image. I don't remember the exact caption.
Yeah, but it's not so virtual now. It's really the one that is appearing now, as it is appearing. So Gauguin. Gauguin is this one, huh? This one, huh? Okay. So this is just by using Photoshop, let's say, to have an idea how it will be after restoration. And so it's more than restoration in this case. But so it did really like this. So it has removed this bar.